He was in my face 3 times. I just wanted to get out of there, and it's a double tech.
That is Luka Doncic, the NBA's leading scorer, explaining the exact moment that just got him suspended and cost him $250,000. But while the world fixated on Luka, Bronny James was right there. And what Bronny revealed about all of it, nobody saw it coming. The night Luka crossed the line. Something extraordinary happened on the night of March 27, 2026. Something that, depending on which part of the story you were watching, depending on whether your eyes were on the scoreboard, on the basket, or on the sidelines, looked completely different. And Bronny James was right there in the middle of all of it. Not as a bystander, not as a footnote, as a participant, as an active player. To understand the full weight of what happened that night, you have to understand what Luka Doncic had been doing in the weeks leading up to it, because this was not a player who was struggling. Luka Doncic had been averaging a league-leading 33.7 points, 7.8 rebounds, and 8.2 assists per game across 62 contests in the 2025-26 regular season. Those are not merely good numbers. Those are the kind of numbers that put you in conversations about the all-time greats. That puts you on the same pages as names that are carved into the marble of this franchise's history. And the month of March in particular had been something that the Sports Center analysts were struggling to find adequate words to describe. In just his first full season with the franchise, people talk about the legacy of this team, about the purple and gold standard, about what it means to wear that jersey in that building in front of that fan base. And Luka Doncic was honoring that legacy with performances that even the most demanding and historically knowledgeable Lakers supporters were finding genuinely difficult to put in the proper context. And the three-point shooting, which had become its own separate phenomenon, a weapon so effective that entire defensive schemes were being architected around the single task of keeping Luka Doncic from finding space behind the arc, had reached levels that the historical record of this franchise had never seen before. And LeBron James, the man who has witnessed and participated in more chapters of NBA history than perhaps any living player, who has absolutely nothing left to prove to anyone, who is by any reasonable measure the greatest Laker of his generation, even LeBron was leaning into the idea that Luka Doncic's performance needed to be protected, nurtured, and made the centerpiece of everything this team did. That was LeBron talking about the golf outings the Lakers had been taking together as a team bonding exercise. He was talking about letting Luka win a hole on the course, because what matters more than any scorecard is that when the lights come on at 7 p.m. and the ball tips off, Luka Doncic is playing with maximum confidence and maximum fire. LeBron's message was not subtle. This team runs through Luka Doncic, and everything else, including who wins on the back nine, exists in service of that. On March 27th, 2026, at Crypto.com Arena in Los Angeles, the Lakers were dismantling the Brooklyn Nets in a game that would ultimately finish 116-99. It was a comfortable victory, a dominant performance. Luka Doncic alone had already put up 41 points, his second consecutive 40-point game, his sixth 40-plus performance in just his last 12 contests. And by the time the third quarter was underway, this game had long since been decided. With 5 minutes and 12 seconds remaining in the third quarter, Doncic was whistled for an offensive foul. It was the kind of call that happens hundreds of times every night across the NBA, a borderline judgment by an official doing his best in real time. But what happened after the whistle was what mattered. Nets forward Zaire Williams got up in Luka Doncic's face, and he started yelling. According to crew chief Sean Wright's review of the incident, what followed involved Doncic making a shoving motion toward Williams, and Williams retaliating with a swipe at Doncic's face. The officials brought it to video review. When the review was completed, both players received double technical fouls, a completely reasonable outcome by the letter of the rule, a completely understandable sequence of events in the heat of competition. And for Luka Doncic, sitting before that call, at 15 technical fouls on the season, that 16th technical was not just another yellow mark in the officials' ledger, it was a suspension. After the game, Luka went to the media. He had just dropped 41 points on the Brooklyn Nets in a winning effort. He should, by any normal logic, have been in the most effusive and celebratory of moods. Instead, he found himself fielding questions about 10 seconds of physical contact in the third quarter, and what he said, the specific words he used, the frustration audible in every syllable, tells you exactly how Luka experiences these moments.
He was in my face 3 times. I just wanted to get out of there, and it's a double tech.
That is Luka Doncic communicating the feeling of being provoked, of having someone in his personal space and in his face in a way that he found genuinely intolerable. And from what the video showed, Williams was extremely animated. Luka was not imagining the provocation. But here is the problem with being Luka Doncic on March 27, 2026. With 15 technical fouls already on his season ledger, you cannot respond. Not with words, not with a shove, not with anything that an official's trained eye can identify as a retaliatory or aggressive action, because the 16th one cost you a game. Full stop.
Of course, what can I say? I didn't even talk.
He continued.
I just wanted to get out of there. They say my push was exaggerated, which was obviously not. And I don't know what else to tell you.
There's something almost heartbreaking about that last phrase. I don't know what else to tell you, because Luka is right that, from his perspective, the situation was being blown out of proportion, and Luka is also, simultaneously, entirely wrong to have done what he did. Not because the action was particularly egregious in isolation, but because of the impossible situation his own technical foul accumulation had put him in. He was never going to win that review. Not that night, not at 16. On March 28, 2026, the NBA made it official through Executive Vice President and Head of Basketball Operations, James Jones. The announcement arrived in the clipped, business-like language of league communications, but the meaning was unambiguous. Los Angeles Lakers guard Luka Doncic has been suspended 1 game without pay for receiving his 16th technical foul of the 2025-26 season. The Lakers had attempted an appeal, just as they had successfully done weeks earlier, when Doncic's 16th technical against the Orlando Magic was rescinded after the team challenged it. But this time, the appeal found no traction. The technical foul was upheld, and the suspension would be served on March 30th, 2026, when the Lakers hosted the Washington Wizards. The man who had been rewriting the Lakers' record books, night after night, in front of increasingly disbelieving audiences, that man would be sitting in a suit on the sideline. The day before the game, on March 29th, Lakers head coach J.J. Redick addressed the media at practice, and what he said about his star player, the player he now coaches, the player he once played alongside in Dallas, the player whose competitive wiring he understands from the inside out, was one of those moments where a coach's words managed to say far more than the literal content of the sentences.
He's disappointed, that he wants to be there for his teammates.
He is not relieved or secretly pleased that the grind of a long season has handed him an enforced night of rest. He is genuinely, authentically, deeply disappointed. Because showing up is not an obligation for Luka Doncic. It is an identity.
And I've talked about this all year. He plays. He's not a guy that takes games off and can be banged up.
Redick had been coaching this team all season, watching Luka play through a hamstring issue, watching him grind through a brutal 6-game road trip, watching him put up 40-plus points on nights when the average superstar would have taken the easy path and coasted. And what Redick was communicating to the media in that moment was not coaching speak. It was a genuine character reference for a player who had been his teammate. Now here is where this story takes a turn that most national media coverage spent far less time on than it deserved. Because while all of this was unfolding, while the 16th technical was being issued and the suspension machinery was being set in motion, and Luka Doncic was being walked out of the building knowing what Monday would bring, something else happened in that same Lakers versus Nets game that was every bit as newsworthy, if not more. In the identical game where Luka Doncic picked up his 16th technical foul, LeBron James and his son Bronny James made NBA history together. For the very first time in the history of professional basketball, a father passed the ball to his son in an NBA game, and the son knocked down the shot, LeBron to Bronny, a three-pointer. A moment that had been 2 decades in the making, from the backyard courts of Akron all the way to the hardwood of Crypto.com arena.
Well, I think not take it for granted and just, being in the moment of us being on the floor once again.
Not taking it for granted. On the same night that Luka Doncic was being handed a suspension that would keep him off the floor the next time this team played, Bronny James was standing on that same court in the same uniform and finding within himself genuine and unpretentious gratitude just for being there, just for the moment, just for the floor beneath his feet and the ball in his father's hands and the shot that went through. That contrast between Luka's fire and frustration on one end of the emotional spectrum and Bronny's quiet, present, genuinely grateful nature on the other is the real undercurrent of what March 27, 2026 meant for the Los Angeles Lakers. Two players occupying the same building at the same time, experiencing the same game in completely different ways. And the consequences of one player's experience were about to create an opportunity, a real, genuine, meaningful opportunity for the other. But before we get to that, there's a question that the casual observer might have, and it's a fair one. Was this suspension really inevitable? Was this truly the first time this season that Luka Doncic reached 16 technical fouls? Because if you blinked in early March, if you weren't paying extremely close attention to the timeline of events, there is a whole other story here that almost nobody outside of the Lakers beat is putting into proper context. A story involving trash talk, allegations of family disrespect, a hearing before the NBA league office, and a moment where the league very nearly handed Luka Doncic this exact suspension 2 weeks before they actually did. The pattern, the precedent, and the price. The suspension of Luka Doncic on March 30th, 2026 did not arrive from nowhere. It did not materialize like some random and unforeseeable act of the basketball universe descending upon an innocent player at the worst possible time. What happened against the Brooklyn Nets on March 27th was not a fluke, not a miscarriage of justice, and not, as certain corners of the internet might have you believe, some coordinated effort by the NBA to take down its most compelling star. Let's start with the mechanics, because understanding the rules is the foundation of understanding everything else. Under NBA rules, any player who accumulates 16 technical fouls during a single regular season is automatically suspended 1 game without pay. There is no committee deliberation, there is no context considered, there is no appeal process that can prevent the suspension itself once the threshold is reached, though individual technical fouls can sometimes be rescinded before the count hits the trigger number. The moment the math reaches 16, the game is lost. And then, what most casual fans don't know, what makes Luka's situation for the remainder of the regular season genuinely nerve-wracking for Lakers fans, is what happens after the 16th. Every 2 additional technical fouls accumulated after the 16th add another automatic 1-game suspension. So technical foul number 18 triggers game 2, number 20 triggers game 3. The escalation is relentless, automatic, and does not care about the quality of the opponent you're being suspended against, the importance of the moment, or whether you were genuinely provoked. Earlier in March, during a game against the Orlando Magic, Doncic got into a verbal altercation with Magic center Goga Bitadze. The circumstances of that exchange were genuinely inflammatory. Doncic maintained that Bitadze had said something disrespectful about his family during the course of the game, an allegation that Bitadze denied after the fact. But regardless of who said what to whom, the officials on the floor saw a verbal confrontation that merited a technical foul, and that technical pushed Luka's count to 16 for the first time in the 2025-26 season. The Lakers appealed, the NBA listened, and remarkably, against the odds that most observers would have assigned to such an appeal succeeding, the league rescinded the technical foul, no suspension. Luka back to 15. A second chance that, by any reasonable measure, the league was not obligated to extend. The league had already demonstrated its goodwill by rescinding the Orlando technical. To turn around less than 2 weeks later and rescind another one, particularly one that involved physical contact that a video review had documented in plain view, would have been a level of accommodation that the NBA simply could not extend to any player, regardless of his market value or his MVP credentials. Throughout his 8 seasons across the NBA, 7 in Dallas and now into his Lakers tenure, Doncic has consistently ranked at or near the top of the league in technical foul accumulation. The arguments are almost always the same. A call that he disagrees with, an official who he feels has been inconsistent, a moment where the competitive temperature inside him reaches levels that his impulse control cannot fully manage. He is not a dirty player. He does not try to injure opponents. His technical fouls are almost universally the product of verbal exchanges with officials, complaints about calls, expressions of frustration, the physical contact moments that occasionally escalate from there. Analysts have pointed out across multiple seasons that this tendency creates genuine risk for his team's playoff chances. Not because any individual technical is catastrophic, most of them are absorbed by the team without meaningful consequence, but because the accumulation of them creates a situation where opponents can exploit the knowledge that Luka is one wrong move away from suspension. That knowledge changes how they defend him. It changes the psychological leverage available to opposing coaches. It changes what a physical wing player like Zaire Williams knows he can do when he gets the opportunity to get in Luka's space. Let's also talk money, because it's a real part of this story. ESPN's Bobby Marks calculated the salary forfeiture from this suspension at approximately $264,000, though other sources place the figure closer to $317,000, depending on the precise payroll mathematics. For a player who signed a massive multi-year contract extension in August 2025, this sum does not alter the trajectory of his financial life. It is not nothing, but it is not devastating. What it does represent, symbolically and practically, is the tangible cost of not walking away, when walking away was the only correct move available. 10 seconds of physical contact in the third quarter of a game, his team was winning by double digits, $250,000 in lost salary, and a seat on the bench on Monday night. The math of emotional control is rarely laid out so cleanly. The consensus among analysts who covered this story was remarkably uniform. The timing of the suspension was, as ESPN framed it, costly in salary, but nearly perfect in competitive terms. The Washington Wizards entered March 30th with an approximate record of 17-56, playing on the second night of a back-to-back, missing multiple significant contributors, and operating in full tanking mode with a roster populated largely by developmental players and undrafted prospects. If you are going to miss a game, this is the game to miss. Newsweek noted that the Lakers were favored by over 16 points, even without their best player, a spread that speaks volumes about the relative capabilities of the two teams on that night. The competitive stakes of one Luka Doncic absence against Washington Wizards, who are trying not to win, as the Locked On Lakers hosts candidly observed, were approximately zero. What was not zero, what loomed much larger and much more consequentially, was the question of what happened inside the Lakers locker room and on the Wizards game court in terms of depth development, rotation testing, and the building of the kind of collective confidence that a team needs heading into April and the beginning of the postseason. The ripple effect and what comes next. Pre-suspension analysis from Athlon Sports had already highlighted that Luka's absence would force a meaningful Bronny James decision in terms of rotation minutes. But to fully appreciate what that opportunity means, you have to understand what Bronny James's journey with this team has looked like from the inside. He is not simply a young player trying to earn NBA minutes. He is a young player who has been doing that under the most intense, relentless, unforgiving microscope that any developmental player in professional basketball history has ever been subjected to. He is LeBron James's son. He plays on LeBron James's team. Every time he touches the ball, every time he passes up an open shot, every time he makes a mistake or a brilliant play, it is parsed and analyzed and debated by millions of people who have opinions about him that are shaped by far more than just the quality of his basketball. LeBron himself had spoken about how Bronny's development had been progressing in recent weeks, and the father's perspective on his son's shooting, one of the most scrutinized elements of Bronny's game, was particularly telling.
It's just getting back to where it was before the incident. He's always been able to shoot the ball. He's shot the ball at a high level.
Before the incident. That's a reference to the cardiac event that briefly threatened Bronny's career before it even began. The health scare that put everything else in perspective, and that, by LeBron's account, did not diminish his son's shooting ability so much as it temporarily affected his confidence and rhythm. The ability was always there. The tool was never broken. It just needed time and reps and the gradual accumulation of moments where the shot goes in and the body remembers what the mind already knew. And with Luka Doncic on the bench in a suit on March 30th, Bronny James had more opportunity to accumulate those moments than he had enjoyed in any single regular season game all year. Luka's presence dominates the ball and the offensive structure in ways that, while brilliant for the team's overall performance, inevitably compress the available space for developmental players to find their footing. Without Luka, the ball moves differently, the touches are distributed differently, and for a young player trying to build confidence, that redistribution can be invaluable. But there is another injury subplot winding through this Lakers story that deserves considerably more attention than it has been getting, and it intersects directly with the Luka suspension in ways that make the overall picture more concerning than a simple rotation adjustment. Marcus Smart, at the time of Luka's suspension, had missed 4 consecutive games with what was being characterized as an ankle issue. Though, as anyone who has followed the Lakers' injury communications throughout the season knows, the clinical labels attached to player absences frequently undersell the actual complexity of the situation. Smart was listed day to day. a designation that, in Lakers parlance, as the Locked On Lakers host noted with appropriate dry humor, is about as informative as a weather forecast from 3 weeks in the future. The honest answer, based on the available information, was that nobody outside the medical staff, and perhaps Redick himself, fully understood what Smart was dealing with or when he would return. And that uncertainty was genuinely alarming for people who understood what Marcus Smart means to this team when the games get hard. The Locked On Lakers analysis of Smart's value to the team was emphatic. The difference between the Lakers with Marcus Smart and the Lakers without him was night and day in terms of competitive success. His net rating, his plus-minus numbers, his defensive communication, his willingness to be in teammates' ears and hold them accountable. These are not qualities that can be easily replicated by any other player on the roster. Nobody else on this team does what Marcus Smart does. His presence elevates everyone around him in ways that show up in the data and in the eye test simultaneously. Redick acknowledged the Smart injury situation when asked about it at the March 29th practice session, noting that both Smart and DeAndre Ayton were in the day-to-day camp and that the team was simply waiting for them to feel ready to return. That careful, measured language was the right instinct, not alarming the fan base unnecessarily, not making promises that the medical reality might contradict, but it did little to resolve the underlying anxiety about what would happen if Smart couldn't get healthy before the playoffs. With Luka suspended on March 30th and Smart still sidelined, the Lakers were operating without two critical components of their best roster construction simultaneously. Against the Wizards, that was manageable. Against Oklahoma City or Cleveland in the second half of the regular season, considerably less so. And this is where every thread of this story, the suspension, the Bronny history-making moment, the Marcus Smart injury, the MVP race, the playoff positioning, converges into something larger and more resonant than any individual element. The Los Angeles Lakers of the 2025-26 season are, by any legitimate measurement, a legitimate contender. They have won 14 of their last 16 games entering the Wizards game. They have built genuine collective chemistry through a brutal stretch of road games, back-to-backs, and the kind of adversity that either breaks a team or tempers it. And the team has Luka Doncic, who, when he is locked in and healthy and free from the cloud of pending suspension, is as close to unguardable as any player in professional basketball today. The suspension, in the fullness of its context, is not a catastrophe. It is not a harbinger. It is, as JJ Redick himself framed it, a reset, an enforced night off for a player who has been running at extraordinary intensity for months, a rare opportunity for the depth players to breathe, and a concrete reminder that even the best players in the world operate within structures and rules that exist to protect the integrity of the competition. Luka would return Tuesday against Cleveland, fresher than he had been in weeks, carrying the brief but meaningful benefit of a night off his feet and away from the pressure of the fourth quarter. And the team he was returning to, the teammates who had stepped up in his absence, who had been given more responsibility and had, presumably, risen to meet it, would be a slightly more battle-hardened, slightly more collectively confident group than the one he left behind. And Bronny James, who made history with his father on the night this story began, who has been growing quietly and deliberately and with genuine purpose within the structure of this team, would carry forward whatever confidence the Wizards game provided. Another data point in the ongoing, patient progress measured in moments story of a young man who, unlike many of his critics, is doing exactly what you are supposed to do in your second NBA season, learning, improving, and being ready when the opportunity arrives. LeBron James, in his post-Nets post-game media session, spoke about exactly this philosophy for how you approach the final stretch of a long season. You fight for what matters, you are smart about the rest, and you build the habits that will define you when April comes and the real tests begin. The door had opened, Bronny walked through it, and when Luka Doncic returned from his one-game suspension, ready to resume his assault on the NBA record books and the Western Conference standings, the story of what happened on March 27, 2026, and its aftermath would be one more chapter in a season that was still very much being written. The last chapters, the ones that matter most, were still ahead.